We are going to talk about Mac Jones today because I just did the updated rankings on Patreon, patreon.com/bulletproof FF. Went through all the dynasty rankings, and there was some pushback. There was some pushback about my placement of Mac Jones in the dynasty rankings. So we went into it with the patrons already, but basically my process used to rely on a model from Football Outsiders called Cubase. They stopped using it this year and came out with a new one called Cubase 2.0. It doesn't work with what I used to use Cubase for, so I am kind of in between, if you will, processes right now on quarterbacks. I'm still finding my way on how to properly navigate this new Cubase-less world. But anyways, Cubase 2.0 is still an interesting model. It's just a little different than what I used to use, and I can't use it in the way that I used to use the old one. So I kind of had to guess, I guess would be the way to put it. Basically looking at the inputs that they used to use and guessing at where the players would rank based on that. Anyways, one of the big things that I also factor in is draft capital, because draft capital has proven to be extremely important when it comes to quarterbacks. And what we're going to talk about right now is all quarterbacks drafted after pick 10, so pick 10 and later. And then we're going to base it on Cubase 2.0. Cubase 2.0 is the Football Outsiders' new model. It factors in rushing. Old Cubase did not. It doesn't work as well with, or it doesn't work at all with how I used to use my process. But anyways, it's still a pretty good model. It just doesn't work with the way I do things. Anyways, let's get back to it. Cubase 2.0, all quarterbacks drafted after pick 10 or later. And we split it between positive and negative Cubases, Cubase 2.0s. So the Cubase 2.0 positive after pick 10 to pick 32, first round pick only. We have Ben Roethlisberger, Jay Cutler, Patrick Mahomes, Jason Campbell, Tim Tebow, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers, Christian Ponder, Deshaun Watson, Johnny Manziel, Josh Freeman, Lamar Jackson, Paxton Lynch. All of these players, except for 4, have hit a top 24 season. Essentially, they were above average or better starters at some point in the NFL in terms of fantasy football. It gets a lot different when you look at negative Cubase 2.0 numbers, especially when you're factoring in this range of draft capital. So again, these are all quarterbacks drafted pick 10 or later in the first round of the NFL draft. These are all of the guys with negative Cubase 2.0s. Brady Quinn, EJ Manuel, Matt Leinart, Mac Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Blaine Gabbert, Teddy Bridgewater, Josh Rosen, Jordan Love, Brandon Whedon, Joe Flacco, and JP Losman. You will notice that Mac Jones was on that list. This is not a good list. Only 3 of this entire list have hit a top 24 seasons, and not a single one of them, 0, absolutely 0, have hit a top 12 season. Not even one, which is pretty remarkable in my opinion. This is the group that Mac Jones fits into. This is not a good group. This is not where you want to be. So the other thing to consider here is that I've been told that Mac Jones only went later in the draft. He only was 15th pick in the NFL draft simply because this class was loaded with quarterbacks, which this class was loaded with quarterbacks. But that's not why he was the 15th pick in the draft. When I look at Lance Zierlein's NFL.com film grades, I don't use these as a means of telling me who is and is not good at football. I haven't found them to be effective that way. But what it does tell me is usually where these players will be drafted. Are they going to be early first round picks? Are they going to be late first round picks? Are they going to be second round picks? So on and so forth. Lance is very, very good at nailing draft capital. And when we look at only first round picks with NFL.com grades, they go back to 2014. So this is now 7 classes of rookies in the first round. Mac Jones ranks absolutely 3rd last. It ain't good. It's really not good. He was never going to be an early first round pick, and if he was, it was going to be a colossal nightmare. It would have been terrible. So yeah, Mac Jones came in 27 out of 29 in film grades from NFL.com. Should be noted, Patrick Mahomes ranked lower on film, according to Lance Zierlein, but for the most part, he's pretty good at nailing draft capital. A lot of the guys with high film, or a lot of the guys with the high film grades went 1st or 2nd overall. The first 8 guys, the highest 8 grades, all went 1st or 2nd overall. Except for Sam Darnold, he went 3rd. But I mean, whatever. Like I said, it's not good at predicting it's not necessarily good at predicting who is and isn't good. Or it's no better than draft capital. Maybe that's the way to put it. It's as good as draft capital, which is pretty good. All things considered, draft capital is super important at the quarterback position. We just talked about that. Mac Jones was never going to be early first round pick. That's the point. He didn't fall to 15 because of all the other good quarterbacks in this class. He fell to 15 because he just wasn't that good of a quarterback. That's really what it came down to. Anyways, part of the problem with the Mac Jones profile is that he only really was a starter for 1 year, and his team was stacked. Even if it wasn't as stacked as the year with Tua, it was still a pretty strong team. At the quarterback position, we are looking for Konami code quarterbacks, right? If you're not a Konami code quarterback, you're not a top 5 option anymore. Here are the top prospects this year in rush yards per game, best season in college football. Trevor Lawrence had 43.3. Justin Fields had 47.9. Zach Wilson had 24.6. Trey Lance had 68.8. And Mac Jones came in with a startlingly low, unbelievably low 2.7. This is Josh Rosen level rushing. This is not good. This is really not good. And I get that some of y'all think that he's sneaky athletic, but I just prefer the quarterbacks that are a little less secretive about it. If you're going to be sneaky athletic, just be actually athletic and show it on the football field. It's not that much to ask for. But let's flip the page, because he was historically good at Alabama in 2020. He was one of the best he put together one of the best college quarterback seasons we've ever seen, to be perfectly frank. His QBR, if I recall, is in the 100th percentile because it's the top of the list. He was incredible. The problem is he's a nothing in the passing game or in the running game. So let's say, for instance, he has a season where he finishes third in passing yards and second in passing TDs in a given season. So he is one of the best passers of the football in the entire NFL. Just like a guy named Tom Brady did last year in 2020 when he finishes the QB9 in points per game. You need more than passing ability in today's NFL. The Mac Jones profile, if he's good at football, unlike all the other guys that look just like him, if he was actually good, we are talking about a guy who routinely finishes as a quarterback 2 in fantasy football. And my question for you is, did you enjoy owning Joe Flacco? Because the best upside for Mac Jones, in my opinion, is that he can have a long career in the NFL. Joe Flacco had a long career in the NFL. In fact, he had 9 top 24 seasons. I believe that is basically what we're talking about with Mac Jones with his upside. He's going to be, if he hits, somewhere between quarterback probably 15 and 20. That's his peak. That's not interesting to me. That's Joe Flacco. And as much as you think Joe Flacco is a meme at this point, he had a lot of seasons in between quarterback 15 and 20. He had very few above that and very few below that. He had 9 total seasons between quarterback 13 and 24. That's what we're talking about with Mac Jones. And I'm being a bit facetious because Joe Flacco is such a meme that it's hilarious to point this out. But really, that's what we're talking about. Kirk Cousins is probably best case scenario. I am not projecting in any way, shape, or form that Mac Jones becomes Tom Brady, but I think it's reasonable that he could become Kirk Cousins. I think that's probably his top end. His probably mean range of outcomes is Joe Flacco, and he's Dwayne Haskins at worst. He's out of the league. He's Josh Rosen. He's out of the league. That's what we're talking about with the floor of Mac Jones. He's not someone that I'm investing in. He is not someone that I'm suggesting that you invest in. He is not something that I in no way want on my fantasy team. The only time that I took Mac Jones was when I'm in extremely super flex leagues. I'm talking about ridiculous scoring settings where the only thing that matters is quarterbacks. And usually in those leagues that I'm in like that, they focus on passing and actually mute rushing ability quarterbacks. Basically, there is virtually 0 leagues that I want Mac Jones in. Even in those leagues, I'm trading him. If I got him, I'm looking to trade. Just get out of Mac Jones. He's probably not. And the next part of it is, if you look at the Mac Jones supporting cast, who do you want? Who is going to prop him up? Who is going to drag him along? He doesn't have a Stephon Diggs. He could someday. They could trade for a Stephon Diggs caliber wide receiver. They may even sign one in free agency. Heck, they could even draft one. But there isn't one there now. And I'm not betting on what might happen. Back in 2020, I actually liked Tua Tagovailoa better than I liked Joe Burrow. And then what happened was Joe Burrow went to the Bengals, and they drafted T. Higgins at the beginning of the second round. And I said, hey, you know what? He's got a stud for the rest of his life. Let's go. I'm in. He's locked in. The bird is in the hand. And then the Miami Dolphins didn't draft any wide receivers. They didn't draft anyone that could actually help Tua. They didn't have anyone that could drag Tua along. And then everybody kept saying, yeah, but look at all the draft picks they have next year. They're set. They're going to get weapons next year. And I was like, yeah, but what if they pull an Indianapolis Colts where we think it's a smart front office, and then they spend draft picks on Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell in back-to-back years, which were bust-tier wide receivers. That could be the Miami Dolphins. And then we get to the draft in 2021, and the Miami Dolphins take Jalen Waddle at 6th overall. They traded an extra first-round pick. They traded 12 overall and an extra first to go up and get friggin' Jalen Waddle? This was the worst-case scenario for Tua Tagovailoa fans. And if you're hoping for something better for Mac Jones, it probably won't happen. It's really hard to get good players. Good players are rare. That's why we covet them. That's why we move mountains to get Jamar Chase level prospects, and we do not care about Jalen Waddle level prospects, unlike the Miami Dolphins. Sell Mac Jones. That's all I'm trying to say.